Hi, I'm Dan Kibisky with the Society of Professional Journalists International Community. Covering global events does not require going overseas. Across America, there are millions of people whose families are of recent immigrants. These people have stories not only about their lives in the United States, but also about where they came from and why they came to the United States. The international community has long argued that news outlets should pay more attention to these immigrant communities. The stories they get will not only be local, but also national and global, and educational for everyone. The PBS station in my hometown, Detroit, has a great set of short interviews with people about why and how they came to the Motor City. The interviews show how Detroit has grown and changed because of the influences of these new residents. With me is Ed Moore, Vice President of Content at Detroit PBS, to talk about the series Destination Detroit. Ed, thank you very much for being here. It's great to see somebody from my hometown.
Detroit misses you.
So what prompted you to start this program? And did you have to do anything special, fundraising or whatever, to get it off the ground?
Yeah, so Detroit PBS has a long history of taking relevant PBS national content. Great documentaries and history that we have. From American Experience to Henry Louis Gates, and Henry Louis Gates was really our impetus for getting this started with his Great Migrations documentary that came out last February of 2025. And so we really saw that as an opportunity to do one-on-one engagement with our community to get their stories. Everybody's got an origin story of how your family got to where you were. Everybody kind of knows it. A lot of people are really proud of it in most cases and can recite it quite well. So when Henry Louis Gates came to Michigan Central, which was the old train station, if you remember, sitting derelict for decades, just really a kind of is such a huge building, and for such a long time was kind of symbolic of Detroit's decline, that when
Right.
Ford came in and just renovated the entire thing and did it in such a beautiful way. If you go in there, when they opened back up, Henry Louis Gates, that's where his Great Migrations documentary opened the series with, was in Michigan Central. And so we talked to the folks at Michigan Central during Black History Month last year. It's like, can we come in and set up and just ask people that are coming through to see the train station to tell us where they came from? And so we did like 3 weekends of events where we, on one side of Michigan Central in the Grand Hall, we were screening Dr. Gates's documentary series. And at the other end, we were inviting people to come up and tell us their stories. Um, Being Black History Month, we had a lot of Detroiters that were coming up telling us a story of the Black migration coming up to Detroit specifically, how their parents got here, why they came up, what were they looking for? Some cases, what were they running from, honestly? And so for 3 weekends, we did this. The Michigan Central was our sponsors to then enable us to come in and really kind of kick-started something off that did a couple of things. One, it was a way to look at Detroit's history and to tell its story in a very different way, in an extremely grassroots way, a different way of looking at Detroit. Because if you think about Detroit, Detroit's always the history of Detroit is always told through the invention of the automobile and the invention of the assembly line, and then it was the World War II arsenal of democracy. Well, it took people to make that happen, right? And so the Detroit we know today, the Detroit that exists as we know it, was really created in the 20th century. And it was on the backs of a lot of people that came from either the Deep South or Appalachia or across the seas. They came to look to Detroit, looking for that $5 a day, looking for a way, a path toward the middle class, which you could say was invented here in Detroit. So as far as the money, we're raising money as we go to keep collecting
Mhm.
these stories and to keep
So,
reaching out to different communities. So we started with the Black community here in Detroit, telling a story of coming up out of the Deep South, thanks to Henry Louis Gates. But we had a lot of people approaching us, during that time at Michigan Central. So we were getting people from, their origin stories come from, Central America. We had
so you
uh,
had Vietnamese, you had, I
Vietnamese,
think
yeah,
you had somebody from Laos,
Laos,
um,
Burundi, the
right?
founder of a James Beard winning restaurant. It was from Burundi, came here and
Mm.
told us his story of why he came to Detroit. So yeah, and so since then we have been branching out and gathering stories, within different communities. So one of the latest stories we did was this past summer was the 50th anniversary of the fall of Saigon. And so there was a Vietnamese American Association locally here that were marking the moment. And we were able to get stories
Oh,
of Vietnamese Americans that were sponsored to come here and they settled in Detroit. Um,
wow.
yeah, yeah.
Wow,
So.
that's spectacular. So obviously you're getting some support from these immigrant communities as well, which kind of leads to my next question is what has been the reaction to the people, to your series? What reaction have you gotten from your viewers in Detroit and from the organizations related to some of these the people that you interviewed?
Well, I mean, honestly, uh, the warmth and the outpouring of support has been pretty overwhelming. It's like the first feeling is what we get a lot of is, and we were kind of capturing people's reactions after they did the interview, talking to them like, how did they feel? And a lot of people were feeling one honored that their local PBS station wanted to hear their story, and we had a professional crew and a professional producer out asking the questions and gathering this up, and then we're getting a lot of the people that were interviewed are now like really helping to push that out themselves. So when we do a social media, we have a couple times a week we push out new clips on social media. You get a lot of support from the person and their family pushing this out, saying, "Hey, watch, my aunt or my grandparents are telling the story of our family," and it really drives up some of the views. And so we've had some that have really kind of, uh, you know, sparked a lot of interest, via social media and the different platforms we put it on. So no, I have to say it's kind of with some of the organizations that we talk to at an organizational level, they're like, this is exactly what we would think a PBS station should be doing, is telling the story through its and they're really gratified that we're
Mhm.
taking that step. But for us at Detroit PBS, we're we're very much what we call an engagement station. And it's very important for us, for whatever topic we're working on, through our journalism, through arts and culture, that we're actually meeting face to face, and that's driving our content. Well, this is the ultimate kind of expression of
Mhm.
that, really. This is this you can't get much more grassroots than getting people's stories one at a time, that help fill in the bigger picture of what is Detroit.
Right. Well, speaking of what is Detroit, when we were talking just before we started this recording, you were pointing out the difference between the Detroit of the early 20th century
Right.
and the way it was built then and what's happening now. And you were listing off
Yes.
dozens of different immigrant groups. Could you just talk a little bit
Sure.
about that difference?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, at the turn of the century, as we were both talking about, we both have Polish backgrounds, and everybody's aware of Hamtramck, which rests inside the city of Detroit. It's a separate municipality from Detroit, distinct. But there was Pole Town there, and the Polish immigrants made their way there. You had Corktown, where you had Irish folks from Cork, settling there. And so, at the beginning of the 20th century, it was, a lot of European populations and blacks from the deep South that were coming up to get that $5 a day that, Henry Ford was promising, and it was like an entry to the middle class. And that extended all the way through the arsenal of democracy, in World War II. But the immigrating to Detroit didn't stop in the first half of the 20th century. It still goes on to this day. And we're seeing a lot of refugee communities actually settle down here. So most recently, you had a wave of Afghanis that came through because of our involvement in Afghanistan. Before that, during the Iraq War, you would see a lot of Chaldeans coming here and become Chaldean Americans, settling down in the early part of the 21st century. Um, we've got quite a large Bangladeshi community that actually has settled into Hamtramck. Hamtramck now is like a huge population of Yemeni and Bangladeshi. As a matter of fact, there's one area that we refer to as Banglatown that's there. And of course, you still have Southwest Detroit, which has been a home for a lot of folks from Central America and Mexico that have settled into that area as well. So Detroit these days is one of the most diverse cities in anywhere in metro areas anywhere in the country, but it also still kind of remains one of the most segregated as well. And so Destination Detroit was another way to kind of like show the common humanity of all these different communities. And if we can kind of understand, where these different communities came from, and also at the same time understand that they all came here looking for a better life, looking for a place that they could educate their children, where they could make a living, where they could rise up through the socioeconomic ladder, so to speak. And Detroit has that all in common, and it's still going on today, like it did at the turn of the 20th century.
Right. Uh, from all the interviews you've had, and then all discussions you've had with other organizations, as you're looking to the future for Destination Detroit, what's the one thing you think kind of surprised you or impressed you from these interviews?
Um, I think really it goes back to just that everybody's coming here looking for the same thing. And it's just a shot at the dialogue around immigrants to this country always seems to fall back to that these people want to do us harm and that they're taking from us. And instead, what we should be really looking at is like what they're contributing to our communities. And they're contributing a lot. They're contributing, you know, uh, you know, not only their tax dollars, because they're like coming here and getting jobs and trying to raise families, but they're also contributing to the cultural fabric of our communities too. And so I think the thing that just keeps getting reinforced in my mind is that the United States tends to attract people that want to come here and they want to work and they want to be part of something and they want to contribute to something, not that they're here to just take, like which seems to be
Mm-hmm.
the current narrative.
Right. So, what advice would you give to other news organizations, broadcasters, newspapers, websites, if they want to pick up on this idea and maybe initiate a program like it in their local area?
It's it really benefited us that we started even before Destination Detroit, that we were very much a let's sit down face to face kind of group. And so my journalism teams would often go and meet with like we would be introduced into a community or a neighborhood, and we would establish quickly like an anchor organization that could help us connect with the other grassroots leaders, community leaders, block clubs, things of that nature. And it seems like it's a lot of work, and it is a lot of work, but it can be very meaningful, and you can get actually you can get kind of get addicted to it, of like wanting that connection, wanting to, get that one to one, but it eventually does scale up and build to something a lot bigger. And so I'd say, don't shy away from you know, getting face to face, because I know a lot of, news organizations, it's like you're on deadline. You've got that constant like kind of machine that you got to be feeding all the time. You know what I mean? But if you take the time to kind of build this into your process, you'll find stories that you never thought you would have found. It's like it's I always think that like I have a great idea, and it's like it never beats what you know I'm able to get when I'm talking with other people and hearing their experiences.
Right, right, right. Um, we're just about out of time, but I'd just like to give you the last word. Is there anything you would like to add? Any additional comments that you would like to make at this point?
Just that you'll be surprised if you take the step to do this and take on a project like this. You'll be surprised at the goodwill this engenders, and also what it can do for so many times, like journalists can get maligned. It's easy for them to get maligned by people who want to yell fake news and things like that, because we do tend to like kind of, not have like a public face a lot of the times. It's only, mediated. Our connection to the public is mediated by the content that we're putting out. You'll be surprised at like the goodwill and just how much more trust that builds up when you're getting out there and meeting face to face, and then telling those people stories. They really feel honored that you do this, and I think this is like this builds up this virtuous cycle starts to get created between the journalist and the public. So
Wow. Okay. Well, Ed Moore, Vice President of Content at Detroit PBS, thank you very much for taking time from your very busy schedule to be with us today.
thank you. Thanks for having me, Dan.